On today's episode, I want to speak about Resonance Records, which is a fascinating story about preserving the art and legacy of jazz. So hey there and welcome back to Sonic Safari, a channel featuring tales of record collecting. I am your host, Marcus, a Swedish hipster lost in the fog in San Francisco. So last week we celebrated record number 1000 of my collection. So if you have some champagne to spare, why don't you pop it and check it out. For now, let's talk some jazz. So Resonance Records is an independent jazz record label that was founded in 2008. And it's part of the Rising Jazz Stars Foundation, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to preserving the art and legacy of jazz. The fact that it's a non-profit matters in my opinion, as they are able to focus on the art first, even though it might take 4 or 5 years for a release to get out. It definitely does not mean that their releases are cheap, but I'm okay with that because you can tell that they lead with quality. I also like the fact that they are upfront about these releases being collectibles, which is why they in many ways have become synonymous with Record Store Day, for good and bad. So Resonance Record is a relatively small record label, which makes it even more impressive that they managed to become one of the signature releases for any Record Store Day, really. And I think it's a combination between the artists that they release, that these are previously unreleased recordings, and it is a limited exclusive run, so people know that these disappear very quickly. And before we look at some of the Resonance records I have in my collection back here, please like and subscribe. It helps me more than you think. Okay, so let's start with this one, Grant Green's Funk in France. And first of all, just look at that cover. I absolutely love it. So this was the first official Grant Green release in over 10 years when it came out in 2018. And it consists of recordings made in France during 1969 and 1970. And it was released in 3,000 issues. And I have number 2214 right there. And this is something that I love about Resonance Records, that they are all hand numbered, which again, I think is a sign of quality and just attention to detail. It comes on this trifold with the posters from the concert, which is a really nice touch, and also a booklet with pictures and interviews. And this is very much standard for Resonance Records releases, very solid packaging. So next up we have this one, Sonny Rollins in Holland. And this is a collection of live and studio recordings made while on tour in Holland in 1967. And they call that tour the Take No Prisoners tour, and it very much explained the type of music it's unleashed, to say the least. And this was released for Record Store Day, Black Friday in 2020, was pressed in 6,000, and this is number 2956. And something very important to me with Resonance Records is that they work directly with the artist or their estate, which to me is a very important seal of quality and just shows their respect for the artist's legacy. So next up we have this one, Charles Mingus, The Lost Album from Ronnie Scott's, which is a jazz club in London, and this was recorded in 1972 and released for this year's Record Store Day. Now you could say that this is a trifold with the original poster pressed at RTI, mastered by Bernie Grunman, a run of 5,000, and this is 29.97. Or you could simply say the word quality. So Charles Mingus has always been the punk of jazz to me. He's always pushing the limits, never settling, always exploring, and this recording is very much the same. I wouldn't say that it's free jazz, but it's very, very explosive. So just a fabulous recording. So Resonance Record has in many ways become synonymous with Bill Evans, as they have released a lot of his recordings. So I wanted to go through some of them, starting with this one. This is Live at Ronnie Scott's, which is a previously unreleased recording from 1958, and it was released for Record Store Day in 2021. It comes on this gatefold, and they press 7,000 of this, and this is number 3298. Now, this is an archival release, which to me means that the sound isn't great, but there's a historical reason why they pressed this. And in this case, it is because it features the now classical lineup together with Eddie Gomez and Jack DeJohnette, which only existed for 6 months. And don't get me wrong, as always with Resonance Record, the quality is fabulous. And I love this cover, which is a previously unpublished drawing by David Stone Martin, and is also co-produced together with the bass player Jack DeJohnette himself, but the sound quality isn't good at all, so I'm not really sure why they decided to release it, and if I were you, I would skip this one. It is interesting though that Resonance Record decided to release another recording from that same place, the Ronnie Scott's, about 10 years later in 1969, and they called it Evans in England, and it comes on this beautiful gatefold. and they only pressed 2,000 of this, and I managed to snag up a promo copy at the Jazz Record Center in New York City. And this is a much better, richer recording. And what's super interesting about this is that it's actually a fan that was following Bill Evans throughout his tour in Europe, and he was recording his sessions, and he reached out to Resonance Records asking if they could release it before he passed away. And they actually ended up doing this, which is kind of an amazing story. But yeah, this one is very much worth picking up. All right, so next up we have this one, which is Live at the Top of the Gate, which is a recording from 1968, and it comes from this gatefold. If I can open that, and they pressed 4,000 of this, and this is number 3014. So in 1968, Bill Evans made 200 shows, which sounds absolutely exhausting. And what's interesting about this recording is that it was recorded by a then 21-year-old George Claben, who is now the president of Resonance Records. And this is a good sounding record, and the sound is very much influenced by Marty Morell, who just joined the trio as the drummer, and he does not yet take any solos. But yeah, this is a good record and fairly easy to come by. So the two crown jewels of Bill Evans on Resonance Records are the two, so to speak, double albums, starting with this one, Some Other Time, recorded in 1968. And this is the only studio album featuring the classic lineup of Eddie Gomez and Jack DeJohnette. And then the sister release to this, which is Another Time, which was recorded only 2 days afterwards. And what's interesting about this is that they are on either side of the summer solstice. So while Some Other Time is a bit more introspective and winter-like, this one right here is sprawling with summer energy, and these two records are absolutely fantastic. So last but not least, from this year's Record Store Day, we have this one. This is Morning Glory, recorded in 1973, and it features his longest tenured trio together with Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell. And then the sister release, which is called Inner Spirit, which is with his last trio featuring Mark Johnson and Joe LaBarbera. And this was recorded in 1979, and both of these were recorded in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So when both of these were announced for this year's Record Store Day, I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking to myself, do I really need another live recording from Bill Evans? And after having listened to them, I kind of started feeling like this might be the only live recording I need, because I think these sound absolutely fantastic. They are very balanced yet very energetic, so just super happy to have these. So Resonance Record really has become one of these labels that I trust. I think that they pick their releases with a lot of care. They respect the legacy and the history of the artist, and the packaging is just done with a lot of attention to detail and quality. So if you haven't checked them out yet, I really urge you to. All right, friends, so that's it for today's episode. Please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. On the next episode, I'm taking you record digging in San Francisco. Until then, tack och adjö.